Welcome back to the studio, and in this video we'll have a look at how to back up Isar database to Google Drive in Flutter. So let's start by creating a new Flutter application by running flutter create. I'll just give it the name Google Drive, Isar Google Drive backup. Then let's navigate to the project. In our lib, before we head over to our lib folder, let's head over to the terminal and install the necessary dependencies or packages that we need. So we'll run the command flutter pub add. The first package we'll add is Google APIs. Then we'll proceed to install Google APIs auth. The next one will be the Google sign-in package. Then next we're going to install another package called extension Google sign-in as Google APIs auth. So let's install those ones first. So here we have them. We have the Google APIs auth, Google sign-in, and extension Google sign-in as Google APIs auth. This is mainly because of some changes that were done in the Google API services in the I think it was 2022 or 2023. So you can't just use this Google API. We are going to use it somewhere, but we're not. There are certain things that we need. We need to authenticate the user before accessing any Google API services. That's why we need the Google sign-in, and this part will help us in succeeding in getting certain services that are inside the Google APIs package in simple terms, but we'll get to see that. Next, we have other packages to install. So we'll also install Flutter pub Isar because we want to back up a copy of the Isar database in a local database to a Google Drive. Next, we're going to have the dependencies of Isar in short. So Isar Flutter libs. We'll also have the path provider, and then we'll have the build runner, Isar generator, and lastly path. Great, so we have them all here. Now let's get into the coding part. I'll just close the terminal. So first we're going to initialize the Isar. I should have even created an empty project. Let me just clear this. I've just created a simple state class that extends the stateful widget, and we'll just return a scaffold right now. And then I'll just pass it here. Let me just rename the title. Okay, so before we get into the first thing we're going to do is initialize the Isar database. That's the first step that we need to take. And if you're not familiar with what Isar database is, I already have an advanced Isar database tutorial available. I'll just share the link in the description box, and it has 3 parts, so you can go ahead and have a look. It uses the latest version of Isar. Great. Now back to our project, I'll just create a simple Isar database with maybe one collection, because the idea is not to design an Isar database, just to see we already have an Isar database in locally, so how do we upload it to the Google Drive? That's the main focus. Great. So proceed to create a singleton here. So I'll create a simple instance or a variable instance of Isar. Let's import the package. Great. Then how we initialize or open an Isar database is, first we need to call the widgets build, widgets flutter build, flutter binding dot ensure initialized. Then we'll proceed to define a directory. Let me just set this to a sync. Then we'll call the get application documents directory, which will find it in the path provider package. And then we'll just do a simple inst check if Isar dot instant names dot is empty. This is optional. If it's empty, then let's just proceed to define our instance of Isar, and we do that by calling the class Isar dot open, call the open method, and inside here we need to design some schemas. We'll just design one collection. If you're not familiar with what collection is, please proceed to the tutorial and just have a quick look at it if you get confused in any way. But this is the minimum we're going to do on Isar. So then we're just going to define the directory as dir.path, and then we're just going to give the name of the instance that we have created, and we'll give it task instance. Now let's define a collection. I'll just create a new folder and just call it collections, and then inside here we're going to have a new file and call it task.dart. So first things first, let's import the package for Isar. Define a class called task, then we'll annotate it with the word collection. Then inside here we'll define the properties. I'm just defining 2 properties. We'll first have the ID, which will be auto incremented by Isar. Then the next one will be, okay, we can have 3. We'll have the name and whether the task has been done or not, which is true or false. So we'll give the property name as done. So we have that. Then I'm just going to define a file where our code will be generated that will be that Isar will understand. So it will use the build runner and the Isar generator to do that. So we just use the parts, create a part statement and specify where we want that code to be generated. So just call it that. So we'll have an error here, and we also have an error here. We're just going to proceed to call the build runner. So we'll just say flutter pub flutter, not flutter. We'll use that run build runner. Great. So that's we have our file created here. So that's that. So we need to get the name of the schema, which is task schema, and that's what we'll proceed to add in our main that. We'll just come and comment this and just add it here. So it's expecting an array or a list. And then I just proceed to import our collection class that we have created. So that's a simple way of initializing an Isar instance. Okay, so that's the simple part. That's the only thing we're going to do with Isar. Now let's work on the next part, which is now enabling ourselves to be able to push this a copy or a backup of the Isar database to the Google Drive. First things first, I'm just going to work on the platform side. Or before that, let's just design this class first. But because when we create the logic first, it might be confusing. So when we're interacting with Google API services, there are certain things we need to set, and there are two places we need to set. First, we need to implement some settings in the specific platform, and what I mean by platform is either iOS or Android. And if you want to understand what I'm really talking about, you can proceed to a tutorial or a video that I wrote up, I published on user authentication, and there's a specific section about platform integration, how to add specific settings when you're interacting with Google APIs. For example, Google signing, and in our case, we're going to use a Google Drive API. I explain it in both Android and iOS, and in this case, I'm going to be running the iOS simulator, so I'm just going to set it on the info list in our iOS folder. So I'll just proceed to go there. It's best if you set this. If you do not set these configurations, there's a high probability you'll get an error to do with platform. So that's what happens. So in our info list, I'll need to add a few things here. And the second part I'm talking about is the console, Google console. We need to go ahead and create a new project and specify what API service we really want to use, which in our case is a Google Drive API, and it will allow us to create OAuth client ID for the specific platforms, either Android, iOS, or web. And then the next thing will be created for a client ID, and that client ID is what we're going to use in our project. And it will also allow you to download a specific JSON file that will provide more information other than the client ID. So let's proceed to start with the Google console first, because the information that we need to add in our info list we'll get it from after creating that project. So what I'll do, I'll head over to console.cloud.google.com, and inside there you get to create a new project. I just have one already ready over here. So I'll just head over to the API services, and then how you do it, you click on enable API services, and then you come here and search Drive API. So this is the one that we want to use, the Google Drive API. So click on it, and this will allow you to enable. So mine is already enabled. All I need to do is just click on manage. So it takes you back here. So you get to go and check on the credentials that you have, which are here. So currently I have the OAuth 2.0 client ID, and that for iOS and Android. So let me show you how you do that. You head over to click on credentials, create credentials, and decide to create an OAuth client ID. Once you click on that, it will allow you to select which application type you want to create this client ID for. So we have a web application, Android, Chrome extension, iOS, TVs, unlimited input devices, desktop, and even UWP. So when you click on iOS, it allows you to give the information, and then you need to provide the bundle ID of your project. So for the bundle ID, all we have to do is head over to, in the iOS folder, we have the runners folder. So inside the runners folder, we have another folder called runner.xcode.project. And we then proceed to head over to the project.pbx project. You click on that and search for the word product bundle identifier. It will show you the bundle ID of this specific project. In our case, it's com.example.isa Google Drive backup. Great. And for Android, you'll proceed to Android and head over to app src, or no, you'll head over to, once you're in the Android folder, you just proceed to the app folder and to the build.gradle. You'll find the namespace specified, which will be the package or the specific ID of the project, which is com.example.isa underscore Google underscore Drive underscore backup. So you have to confirm, because it's not evident that it's the same both on iOS and Android. So now that you specify that in, or get the specific bundle ID, you then add it here, and then you don't need to add the App Store ID, or neither do you need to add the team ID. Then you click on create. Once you click on create, it will look something like this. So we'll have this, and we'll have a client ID generated for us, iOS URL scheme, which we won't be which we'll get to use that. And also we'll have the creation date. Yeah, so it's as simple as that. And if you need to have it for Android as well, you can do the same. So this is the only thing that we're going to create on the Google console. Now let's proceed to the side of to implement the platform integration. As I had mentioned, in my case, I'm going to use the iOS. If you're using Android, just head over to that video that I have specified where I talk about the platform integration. I talk about both Android and iOS. So inside the runner folder, just head over to info please, and I'll add some code inside here. I'd rather paste it to avoid messing up in terms of indents or anything. So let me just add that. So at the end of before closing the dictionary, we'll just proceed to paste this. So we're going to add a key of type CF bundle URL types, and we're going to just specify the CF bundle URL scheme, which is this this whole thing. This is what we are adding. And if we head over back to our Google console, this is what we have added into our project. Okay. Great. This is what I was saying, the URL scheme. We need to add it inside our info list, and that's what we have added inside here. So once we are done that, we can close this. And now we are done with the platform integration. Now let's work on the logic. And I also need to save the client ID somewhere. So let me just save that. So for client ID, we can save it inside. I'll just minimize this. This project is very small. Inside here, let's just specify, we don't have much going on. I'll just specify a variable that will hold the client ID, and just say final client ID is equals to that. And that's what we're going to use. Now that we have the client ID, we're done with the Google console, we're done with the setting our platform. Now let's work on the logic. Another thing that we need to do, I had missed out on, back to our Google console, I'll just add a test user. So currently the client ID that we have created, it's in a testing phase. I think I can show you that on the OAuth consent screen. It shows that the project or whatever we're doing is in the testing status. So we can actually add a specific other user so that you can be able to go through the whole process, or else you may get an error. So that's one thing I noticed. Without a test user or a list of test users, I would get an error. But if you add this test user when we're still in the testing phase, that would really help. So get to add the test user, the specific test user that you want to use. And then now we can proceed. That was the only thing missing. Now let's design our function. So we'll call our function upload to Google Drive. Great. So let's just add a try and catch, and then discuss on the things that we're going to do here. I'll just call a scaffold message instead of setting a print statement. So all I'll say is call the scaffold messenger and then show snack bar, then define a snack bar. And our content will be a text widget that will hold e to string. So there we have it. Okay, next, now let's get into our try case or block. So first thing, we need to set the Google Sign configuration settings. So the thing is this, you cannot interact with the Drive API without an authenticated client or an authenticated user. So that's why we need the Google sign-in. We need to ask or check first, ask the user to sign in with a specific email address that they want to use the driver. So first things first, we'll just define a variable called of type Google sign-in and give it the name. Let me just give it the name Google sign-in. And then this is where we're going to define the sign-in configuration settings. So the sign-in configuration setting that we are talking about is a client ID, which we already have it at the top there, which is client ID. Great. Now let's work on the next part. So another thing that the Google sign-in allows you to do is add the scope. So let's also add the scope. So for the scope that we're focusing on is that revolves around Google Drive. So we're going to import the specific package that we need, which is the drive. We get it from the Google APIs package. So just call package Google APIs drive v3 and then say as GA, and that's what we're going to use here. So we're going to call and pick drive API and define the scope as drive file scope, because our focus is on the seeing, editing, creating on a specific creating specific Google Drive files. Because when we send a backup of the Isar database to Google Drive, it's going to create that file into the Google Drive. So we need that scope to be able to do that. So we have that. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to now start the signing process because we need an authenticated client. Okay, so let's define a variable of type Google sign-in account and give it the name Google user. And then using the Google sign-in, this one, we'll call the method dot sign in. Great. And if you have gone through the user authentication tutorial, I'm sure you're familiar with this already. Great. So this is the one that's going to now start the sign-in process, where the user is asked either to enter an email address or select an email address from the list of email addresses that they have already signed into. Great. So now we need to do a check. If the Google user is not equal to null, we'll add some logic there. Else, we just need to say send a message. So I'll just proceed to copy this and say something like failed to sign in. Wait. So now let's work on our if. So now that we have a Google user, we now want to design or define an authenticated client. So I'll just proceed to import a specific package. Let's go up. Well, the Google API is auth. So I'll just define it. Package Google API is auth. There we have it as auth. And we'll only show the auth client because that's what we want to use. So we head over to back to our, where we left off. We just define the auth client. And then we're just going to give it the name client, and then we initialize it by just calling our Google sign-in. Then proceed to call the method authenticated client. There we have it. So now we have the client. We need to define now the file that we want to upload. And that's why we made sure that we initialized our Isar database on the start. So I'm just going to define a directory where our Isar database is. So that one we get it from the path provider package. Then now we're going to call a method in the Isar class that copies or makes a copy of the Isar database that exists. So it's making like a backup database. So all you have to do is we're going to call our instance, which will get it from the main. Yeah, we're already inside it. So okay, so it's in the main.dat. So Isar dot copy to file. So that's what it does. Now let's specify where we want to copy it. So we'll just specify it as dir.path, and then we'll specify the name db backup.isar. So that's the simple way we're going to define it. And now that we have this process, what it does, it's creating a copy or a backup. That's all it's doing. Okay, so now we want to design a file that will get that backup file of type Isar. So let me just define another package, import .io as a file, and I'm going to define a new file that will hold whatever that has been created by Isar. So just say fa file is equals to fa.file, and then we just pick the same the path where it has been copied. I haven't defined the name. There we have it. So now we already have a file that we can now work with and upload it to the Google Drive. But before we do that, this file is from .io. We need to, the type of file that is being uploaded to Google Drive is of a different type. It has its own file type, if I may say. So how we do it, we already have it here, the drive, Google APIs drive. So we need to define or design the file in a way that it's acceptable to Google Drive. I'm not sure if that makes sense. So we'll just say define a file called file to upload. Sorry, file to upload. And then we're just going to first initialize it as empty. Then once we have done that, I want to design how the file will be saved. I want to concatenate the name together with maybe the date or the time at which we are backing up this specific database. So I'll just use the date time class and just call it, give it the variable name as did now, and just say date time dot now. So that's what I'm doing first. Then I'm going to call this file to upload and define the name that I want it to be saved once it's in the Google Drive. So how I'm going to define it is we're going to call set the time now dot to ISO. Let's just set it as that. You can set it in a different way. And then I'm just going to pass in the name of the Isar file, which is db backup. But instead of just picking it as is and copying, let's just use the file that we created, this one, and let it pick the absolute path that which we expect to be db backup.isar, right? So we'll just call the path. Not sure if I've imported this. Let's import the path package. Import package path, and then inside here p dot base name, and then we specify the path, which will be the file, this initial file from .io, file absolute dot path. That's what's going to get for us the actual name of the file. But now as you're concatenating it with the current time at which we are picking this file, and then we are also separating the two with an underscore. That's all we've done. Okay, now we have our file, our file that is compliant to Google Drive, or what Google Drive considers as a file. Because initially we had set it as a simple file from .io, but now we had to convert it. Okay, we already have it here, but we haven't yet pushed it. Let me show you first. All we have done is just defined a Google Drive file. There we have it, and then defined a name for it. Sorry. So we're yet to see how the Google Drive file will be able to pick whatever is in this file. It's going to read the contents from this file and add it in the Google Drive file. So these are two types of files. One is from .io, the other one is from the Drive Google APIs. Google APIs Drive v3. Okay. So where are we? So we have defined the name that we want it to be saved once it's in the Google Drive. Now let's interact with the Drive API method. So first thing, we're going to create an instance, Drive API, and then we're going to pass the client. I think we have the client here. Remember the authenticated client? This guy, this one, we need to pass it because we cannot, okay, in real sense, I think we're all familiar with this in terms of Google accounts. You access a Google Drive through your Google account. So you can't access a Google Drive without a Google account. So that's why it needs that authenticated client to know which drive are we accessing exactly, and is this user authenticated before we even make any modifications to the specific drive. Great. Now that we have done that, now we proceed now to create our file and upload our file. So this is how we do it. It will be an await operation. So we'll head over to the drive. So this drive is now the drive of the authenticated user. And this drive provides a number of features. So you can be able to interact with the files, you can be able to interact with different things, the drives, permissions. But what we need is the files. And then we're going to call the create method. So this is the main part of this whole video. So first we need to pass in the Google Drive file that we created, and then we'll define another attribute called upload media, and we're going to call the media class from this package. And what we're going to do is, let me just show you here. We need to create a media with a byte stream of length. So we need to specify first what are we the thing we're creating, what we need to push. It's this specific create method, it's doing two things. It's going to create this specific Google Drive file with now the contents from this file, and then it's going to upload. So it's doing two things. So we need to give it a read from the read by calling the open read. So we're reading from this simple file that is in our directory in where Isar actually copied the backup. And then the next thing we're going to do is specify the length of this specific file. Length sync. Great. So all this this is the main of, after doing all those settings, this is the main person that does the creating of the Google Drive file and uploading it to the Google Drive of the authenticated user. So we've just defined, passed in the Google Drive. So for creating, you pass in the file that you're requesting to be sent to the Google Drive, and then but now you need to add before uploading. You need to before it uploading, you need to add or read from this file, and which will end up being the contents that are from this file will be added or written on this Google Drive file, and then it will be uploaded to Google Drive. I hope that makes sense. And then lastly, just to avoid, because now whenever you create when Isar creates a copy of the Isar database with this specific file, you don't want to always change the name of the backup database all the time. So, and also you don't want to overweigh the device of the user by having so many backups in this specific directory. So once we are done, we just want to make sure we delete the backup, not the actual database, but the backup. So I'll just say if the file, just a simple check, doesn't hurt. If it still exists, we'll just proceed to delete it. And that's all is left. So this is the whole function that does the upload to Google Drive. So now let's look at the scaffold. And the only thing I'm going to do with the scaffold, because the user interface is not the main focus here, is I'm just going to center a simple elevated button and then just call the function, and then we get to see how that looks. So it will have a body, safe area, and then we just center it, and then we'll have a child that will be an elevated button. Let me just remove the const here, and then let me define the text that we want to see, which will be upload Isar DB to Google Drive. I think that's fine. And then inside here we call our function, which is upload to Google Drive. Yeah, simple as that. Now let's run our emulator and see. So there we have it, and we can just proceed to click on it and see. So if I click on upload Isar DB, it asks me if you want to sign in. Click on continue, and then it should direct me to either enter an email address or just select the one that already exists. So I'll click on that, and then you to proceed. So data backup is just a name that I gave in the Google console wants to add it, wants additional access to your Google account. So in the process where, if you recall, let me just go back to the code. There's a place where we specified the scope. This is what scope is all about. Whenever you get you're given access to, you want to you're required to sign in, and a specific application needs to access a certain information about your Google account, either if it's now in our case Google Drive, you tend to see this screen. It's called a consent screen. So when you specify the scope, this is what actually brings out this specific screen, because you see in the text it asks you that you want access to, let me see if I can click on this, see, edit and create and delete all of your Google Drives, or see and edit. It's all about the Google Drive, because in our scope we specified mainly on Drive API, Drive file scope. So that's what this is all. This is how it comes about whenever you specify a scope when you're setting the configurations for Google sign-in, if you've ever wondered how this comes about. So now let's click on continue, and we do not have any error. So all I need to do, of course we haven't experienced any error. So what I'll do, let me just head over to my Google Drive. Let me share my screen. So let's just head over to, so as you can see, here is the file that we have created just now. It has the date and the specific time, and also the name dbbackup.isar. So our Google Drive, our logic is actually working. So simply that's what it does. Okay, so simply we have been able to, so that's how we are doing it in terms of uploading a file to Google Drive. We're just making sure that we have authenticated the user and create an authenticated client that can be passed to our Drive API class. And through this, we're able to pass the file that we want to upload simply. So Isar luckily has a method that allows you to create a backup of your existing or your original Isar database. So this has really helped out, because it's just one line of code. Then now we get to access it inside a file, and that file is the one that we get to use to read the contents and add it in a Google Drive file, and then we get to upload it to Google Drive. So I hope that makes sense. I hope it was simple and straightforward. So until then, see you on the next one.